Welcome to Living Truth. I'm Angela James. Together with John Usher, we invite you to dialogues designed to awaken you to truth, enlighten you to who you are, and to invite you to live a reality that you want. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, Angela from Johannesburg and John from
Middelburg.
Good morning to everybody, and for those of you who have been following and working with the opening activation, we've had some feedback which has been really encouraging in terms of what people have been able to do and shift and change in their own space, utilizing the opening activation, which is really cool for us. Today what's on the agenda is we're going to pull the first three pieces of the opening activation together. And that is the dissolving, healing, and transmuting. And John, I think let's one more time give them the whole opening activation.
Let's dissolve, heal, transmute, and seed in our D&D, crowns, fish, cornucopia, and more in grace. Woo-hoo.
Yep. And yeah, it is. It's a pretty exciting activation, although it's really interesting as you progress through it. So what John and I decided to do today is to pull the first three aspects, which was episode 13, 14, and 15, together into one consolidation, because this is the first part of the opening activation so that you can actually see how it works. So John, would you like to kick us off?
So the three components is about, first one is dissolve. The analogy that I was giving Angela this morning, to me, picture I got yesterday was like having a blood clot, you know. So we know a blood clot's going to stop the flow, causes a lot of damage, depending on where it is, could kill you. But the same is true in our lives, is we sometimes have these identities, pseudo identities, that block the flow in our lives. And part of the dissolving is recognizing the fact that there is this blockage. And the same way as we would dissolve the blood clot is we dissolve that identity, that energy that is blocking our progress. And in that, as much as there is dissolving, there is healing that needs to come from that. And that healing will then give way to the transmutation. And Angela gave us such a brilliant explanation of transmutation last week. Angela, do you want to pull us in on that? Remind us there.
I think I'll come to that one. What I was actually thinking, again, another one of the shower moments. I always have these in water. It really works for me. But what I was really thinking about as an overarching kind of start to this is that what I'm learning is that the opening activation is actually a statement of self-love. It is an activation that also, not only does it open up our heart, but it also, for me, connects me to a love far greater than myself as well. And that's the energy of the love of God, the love of the universe, cosmic consciousness, whatever label you want to put it on or put onto it. It's that real, I think in the biblical terms, they talk about it as being the agape love. And it's that higher order energy and expression and connection to that. And for me, what I'm discovering is that the dissolving, healing, and transmuting is all around what is, as you've quite succinctly and beautifully used the analogy of a blood clot. What is it that's keeping me separate from not only the love of God, but also self-love? And anything and all that is, I dissolve, heal, and transmute. I seed in and out B&D, crowns, fish, cornucopia, and more in grace. And that's really, for me, what the big, if I bring the three energies together. And it also was prompted by a meme that I saw this morning. And that is, healing takes place when we can replace the fear of what is surfacing for us about ourselves with love. And that was, for me, was, if we kind of succinctly put it together, with healing being the middle point between the dissolving and transmuting, it really is that connection for me. The other thing that I also that you and I spoke about this morning as well, is that when you draw with a pencil, you press quite hard and you then erase it out, and you then rub over the whatever you've written on the piece of paper over it with pencil, that imprint is still there. So that's the one element that we're talking about in terms of dissolving. Another thing for me is that and one of our favorite examples is when we put an Eno tablet or Eno's, what do you call them, fruit salts or Alka-Seltzer or whatever it is, into a glass of water. It dissolves, but it's not gone. And I think this is one of the things that where we trip ourselves up, is that there can be, and I know I've had it, a naive expectation that if I've done the dissolving work, it's gone. It's not. It's just changed form. And in the changing form, that's part of transmuting. What it does mean is that I'm aware of those triggers so much quicker than what I would have been beforehand. And I now am developing a set of tools that allows me to work with dissolving, healing, and transmuting before it has a negative impact on me and on those that I'm called to serve. So that's kind of really how I wanted to start it off today. So not sure where or how this impacts for you in terms of the conversations that we had so far around how we pull these three together. We'll get on to the transmuting now.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, in terms of, I like to come at it from more of a scientific perspective, is the fact that you cannot either create nor destroy energy. It purely changes form. And often that blood clot in us is literally that energy. And by dissolving it, as Angela said, it doesn't go away. What it does is it changes its form. It's getting, like if you take, in science we spoke about, you've got a car in motion and it crashes into a wall. The energy of the car's momentum is transferred into the accident, and it becomes a different kind of energy. So maybe in that example, it's a noise, or it becomes a fire or something like that. So as Angela said, is that blockage is removed, but what the elements that were causing the blockage does not disappear. The energy is broken down to more manageable process. And this has been maybe naivety on my side, is where I thought that this dissolving, it's going to resolve it. Dissolve and resolve. Sort it, fix it, make it better, make it gone. And it's not like that. I also thought it was going to be a snippety snappity. It's going to be a quick process. It's going to be a zimzalabim. In saying that, I want to just, for myself, using the opening activation is, I'm an overthinker, and I get into the head space quite seriously, and the opening activation has allowed me to progress a lot quicker through blockages than I would have normally. But in saying that, I kind of thought, wave a magic wand, the rabbit has really disappeared. No, it's just up my freaking sleeve. And you still got to deal with the emotions and the energy and everything else that goes with it. So it's been a sobering time working with Dissolve, Heal, and Transmute, is the fact that all those bits of the dissolving, like to use your effervescent that's dissolving in the water, and all those bits at first float to the surface. They float to the surface, and it requires some input from us to deal with them further, to get that energy really moving on, moving out. I agree with your example of the triggers are just more easily recognized, and then I can deal with them, a little bit sooner, a little bit more effectively. So, hopefully that sets up the stage for transmutation.
Well, yeah, and it does, because I think the whole essence of what the opening activation is talking about, and I love the way that we've blended the two words into pseudo identities, is that what we are doing is, and again, I'm going to shift from the lower nature ego into the higher self. And that's really where transmutation comes in, is it's the bridge between our lower ego nature. And there's nothing wrong with ego when it's positively utilized. It's most of us flip-flop between positive ego and probably more predominantly negative ego, because that's what we've been conditioned to think and believe. And transmuting then gives us that opportunity to work with the energies of dissolving and healing, but also to shift it into a higher level of consciousness. And what that means is that it's not, as John has already said and alluded to, it's not instantaneous. It's a process. It's the self-awareness of that I've been triggered, for starters. Secondly, what's the underlying belief that sits underneath that? And I can give you decades and chapters and verses of those beliefs that keep me caught and stuck in the cycle of I'm not good enough, I don't matter, my work doesn't matter, all of those things. It's the dissolving of that. And we do it by hitting the pause button, number one. So that's a tool, is not to react instantaneously, to acknowledge that the trigger's there, to call it into that space of dissolving, bringing in the energy of the healing, and then requesting of the universe that we start to transmute it into a higher level of being and functioning. And that will allude to a whole lot more when we start on the second half of the opening activation, which we'll start on next week, which is seeding. So I'd like to use a real life example, and that is I have a client. I did a reading for her this week. I've shared this with John already. When she came to me, and I will not break her confidentiality as to who she is, but I just want to use it as an example. When she came to me, she was in quite a negative state at the end or the receiving end of a narcissistic work environment, bosses, that whole trip that a lot of people experience within a work environment. I did a couple of readings for her. Part of the reading, what came out of the reading after the reading had taken place, was for her to work with the opening activation. Well, I think I've done 3 readings for her, probably over a period of about 2 months. I did one for her earlier on this week, and the feedback that she gave me, I'd actually kind of finished giving her the information that was coming through for her. And she actually, during the reading time, said to me, you can't believe how, because my comment to her was how much her energy has shifted, and that she doesn't even sound or feel it vibrationally like the same person at all. And what's transpired for her in working with the opening activation, she told me on the call that she works with it every single morning. She says it like a prayer. She utilizes it during her day. And what has transpired for her in a very short space of time is that she now has a new job offer on the table with an increased salary, and her entire being energy has shifted into, and that's what we're talking about, the benefits or the results of working with the opening activation and how transmutation actually works. Yeah. So I'm certainly hoping to get a testimonial from her that it's not just my say so, and I can only relate the experience to you as she shared it with me. I know for me, and I know John will also talk to it for himself, is that we're digging deep in the trenches. We've done this work for a very long time, where we've worked on our own sense of self, inner journeys, hero's journey, heroine's journey, transformation, worked with learning, creating learning programs that do exactly that. And the surprising aspect for me with the opening activation is just how it's brought every bit of my own pseudo identity into almost one space at one time for me to be able to actually acknowledge, to see it, to dissolve it. And now the healing is to heal it with love, not with derision, not with picking up a big stick and beating myself up over the head with judgment. Yeah. Somebody also gave me a very valuable piece of feedback this week, is that it's to love our journey, because our journey has brought us to where we are. Yeah. And so part of the transmuting, they're all interlinked. You kind of can't separate them for me into chimney stacks. No. Yes, there's a process, but they interlink, because the transmuting is dissolving that solid Enos tablet into a more gaseous and liquid form. It is also about bringing in the healing energies. We're transmuting fear into love, kind of self-doubt, insecurity, judgment, blame, grief, sadness, all of those energies into an energy of love, joy, happiness, which is part of what seeding actually will be doing even more so. And that for me is the evidence of what I'm seeing already in terms of how those 3 elements and aspects are working for me. How about you, John?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the beginning of that testimonial. I look forward to a full-on testimonial from the lady that's involved. The thing that really stood out for me in this process, and as Angela said, not only have we been on our own journey for a long time, in ourselves, been working with the opening activation for a couple of months. The thing that has stood out for me very, very strongly is love is a very strong component, moving from the fear and anxiety into the love. And it is not just the love of self, but it's the love of being self. The love of self for me makes us very introvertedly focused. You know, we focus inward and it becomes about us, and all the energy is going in. And there is a certain amount of and that's what the healing is about, transmutation is about, is we need to absorb some of that energy in order for the healing and the transformation to take place. If I am loving the being of myself, that being translates into some doing, to some action, to expression, and that becomes more outward focused. And I'm, so in that service that I have, standing up in the worth that I believe I have, and so in because of that, not in that, but because of that. So that's the one aspect. The other aspect is trust. Love and trust for me go hand in hand. They're twin sisters, and there is a certain amount of having to trust the process. Angela and I are using this stuff, so we get fished all over the place because of it. We get in, manhandled, or I don't know, cow slapped, or whatever the case may be, all over the dingo place. And you can look at that and say, oh, this is a rocky ride, this is going through the rapids, I don't even know if I've got a life jacket on. The fact is, if you are going to cling on to that love of being self, allow the transmutation to occur, allow the healing to occur, trust in the process, allow the process to take you through the rapids, you're going to get to the calm water at some point. And this is one of the things that I've been, tempted with over especially the last couple of weeks, is to give up and say, geez, this is too much, I don't want to go through this. That's not trusting the process. That's not loving myself. That's not having love for my being myself. That's saying I'm happier being in the old self, and I'm going back. Oops, too late. You can't go back. The change is already occurring. You just got to trust in the process that it is going to come for the better. For myself in this, the process has been going through the rapids. The image of myself drowning is a real possibility. I got to change that picture and start seeing myself floating in the calm waters. Love myself to see myself in the calm waters. Trust the rapids enough to take me to those calm waters. So it is a continuous and ongoing process. So if you feel like you're drowning, pull that cord on the lifebelt, let it full of air. If it's you've been floating in the water a while, it's got all the valves, start blowing some extra air into it so that you float nicely. Do whatever it is you must to get through the rapids. Calm water's on its way.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's been very noticeable for me, and this is whenever you're chunking down a process into its component pieces, is that's what the energy is going to present. When you worked with dissolving, the aspects of me and my own personality and belief systems came up on steroids. They are very similar to, I've worked with them for a long time in terms of releasing them, but it was like the volume amped up like big time. And what I learned out of that in terms of part of the healing and the transmuting processes we went through dissolving, then we went through healing and working with the energies of drawing in, for me, spiritual energy healing, because there's nothing physically sick. I'm not sick, okay, physically. For some people, they'll have a physical reaction in their body as their cells release stuff that they've been holding. And then going into the transmuting. And last week in particular was really, really interesting, should I say. Very interesting indeed. And when John and I were speaking last week, I'm going, not a wonder. We're working with the energy of transmuting. So it's going to show itself. And this is the thing is if you're wanting to embark on that path of being the dreamer, the truth seeker, the light worker, and the wisdom keeper, this is where the work is. This is the work. It is about dissolving, healing, and transmuting. So that was the first point. The second point was that the story, my story, had become my identity. And one of the releases that I've had through the transmutation energy of this week is that, and it sounds like so duh, but it's actually not. When you go through the experience of releasing it, you'll see. And that is that my identity is that I am a beloved child of the God of my understanding. That's in my I amness, the great with a capital A. And John and I talk a lot about the I am and the I am principle. My story is not who I am. So I am a beloved child of the God of my understanding who has a story. And that story is a vehicle to assist other people on their journey towards their own dissolving, healing, and transmuting. And I think that for me really wraps it up quite nicely and ties it up with a nice little bow in a box. Not that we take the lid off the box, of course, because self-awareness is such a key component to working with the opening activation. That's one tool. The other tool, not only over and above the opening activation, is also having a study buddy, because it helps us through what's coming up. If you're going to try and work with this opening activation on your own, I wouldn't recommend it, because you've got nowhere to take it, to process it with. So I'm really grateful that John is he's my opening activation study buddy, and that we have that support of each other in terms of what we're processing. And what's been quite interesting for both of us as we've been going through this journey together is that we've experienced pretty much the same energy at the same time.
Yeah.
What do you say?
No, absolutely. Very grateful that we're doing this together. Sometimes it's not being deep and philosophical. Sometimes it's just, so glad you can swim and do some life-saving techniques, sometimes I need it, sometimes you need it. So yeah, we blow up that life jacket for ourselves and we drag each other through the rapids, make sure we're above the water.
And for want of a better phrase, John has this amazing capacity, and I hope I do the same for him, to call me on my shit. Excuse the language, but you have the amazing capacity to mirror in where I'm in the weeds, where this little life, where this raft that we're on has gone into the bulrushes and into the weeds, and you call me on my shit. And that's, there's an accountability that's implied in working with the opening activation. And so I would certainly very strongly recommend, when you're working with it, to either connect with John or myself, or that you have a buddy that does this with you, to not only call you on your crap, but also, and I'm sorry I'm using that kind of language, but it's just what it is, but also to hold space, not to take personal responsibility for you and for where you find yourself, but also just to really hold a space around you while you're processing and working through what you're working through. And that's about it for me, I think, this week. I think it kind of wraps it up quite nicely.
Sure does. Sounds good to
me. So we will see you on the other side of dissolving, healing, and transmuting, as next week we start to go into the energies of seeding. And yeah, looking forward to opening up the other side of, because I think this is one of the things in John's genius when he first formulated. Remember the days when you came out with the very first statement, how it's refined itself, but when you first formulated the fact that there was a gap that was missing, because we can do all the clearing that we like. If we don't replace it with something else, which is a function of healing and transmuting, then we stay stuck in the weeds. And that has been a lot of my own experience through many aspects of my lifetime. So I'm really looking forward to the energies of seeding and how that unfolds.
Excellent. Me too.
Oh, we'll spot you on the flip side.
I'm happy for it to manifest.
Again, we've got to water and nurture. We've plowed the fields. We now, we've kind of pulled out the rubble and the weeds and the stones and the things, and we've created the soil that is ready to receive the seeds. So let's see where that goes with us next week. Thanks for being with us. God bless, as always, in absolute love and light. And from John,
peace, awe, and wonder, all in grace.
Peace, awe, and wonder. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Cool, guys. We'll see you next week. Bless you in abundance. Thank you for tuning into Living Truth. Our goal is to carry a message of purpose and meaning to those who are seeking to be, do, and have a full, joyous, happy, and abundant life. If you know of any dreamers, truth seekers, light workers, and wisdom keepers who would benefit from our content, please feel free to share our material with them. We would appreciate your time in leaving us a 5-star review on this channel, and visit me, Angela James, at www.angelagalejames.com and John Usher at www.mymatamatters.com.